recording has started.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to the regular monthly meeting at the town of Fairfield for Monday, December 13th, 2021. Can the clerk, Betsy Brown, please call the roll?
Is there an announcement of a new member?
Yep.
Yes, there is. This is Representative Iacono. I'd like to welcome. I'd like to recognize Melissa Longo from District 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you.
Ed Bateson?
Here.
Melissa Longo?
Here.
Veronica Monahan? Amy Ruggiero?
Here.
Karen McCormick?
Here. Here.
I am
Cindy
here.
Curran? Thank you. Hal Schwartz?
Here.
Jeff Steele? Alex Durrell?
Here, thank you.
Jeff Galzeni?
Here.
Tom Lambert?
Here.
Sharon Pastilli?
Here.
Laura Carson?
Here.
Alice Kelly? Marcy Spolier?
He's trying to get on right now.
Yep, thanks. Liz Esma?
Here.
Will Diaz?
Here.
Josh Garskoff?
Here.
Joe Siebert?
Here.
Jay Wolk?
Here.
Steve Barretts?
Here.
Andy Graceffa?
Here.
Lisa Havey?
Present.
John Kuhn?
Here.
Mark McDermott?
Here.
Jill Vergara?
Here.
Karen Wackerman?
Here.
Hank Ferentz? Pamela Iacono?
Here.
Christine Messina?
Here.
Peter Tallman?
I know Peter's trying, if anyone can help him.
Thank you.
I'm useless in that regard.
Christine Brown?
Here.
Drew Georgiadis?
Here.
Margaret Horton?
Here.
Kelly Cinto? Ken Astorita?
Here.
Peter Britton?
Here.
Frank Patisse?
Here.
And Story Tolman?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, let's all please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, let's go to item number 2, to consider and act upon the minutes of the organizational meeting held on November 29th, 2021. Can I please have a motion to approve? Representative Kelly, seconded by Representative Woke. Are there any comments? I thank Representative Vergara.
Yes, thank you. Jill Vergara from District 7. I wanted to see if we could, if I could make a motion to amend the minutes. I wanted to amend the item number 4 on the call to nominate and elect members to serve on the Special Legislative Management Committee. I wanted to see if it was possible for the clerk's office to list the full committees that were assigned on that day so that we have a full record for the future.
Do I have a second for that motion? Representative Havey? Is there any discussion from the body? Just put it in the chat, please. And if you are going to speak, please get on camera. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Betsy, we need to go back to the rest of the minutes, or are we good?
Need a motion to approve as amended.
So do I have a motion to approve as amended? Representative Georgiadis, seconded by Representative Iacono. Are there any comments on any of the other meeting notes from November 29th? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Okay, item number 3 is to consider and act upon the establishment of a senior and disabled tax relief committee. Do I have a motion to approve? Representative Perham, seconded by Representative Wackerman. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, I don't see anybody and nothing in the chat. So all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, seeing none, that motion carries. Okay, item number 4 is to consider and act upon the following appointment to the Employees Benefit.
Mark, I think you're muted.
Mark, we lost you.
Hear me now?
Turn it up a little.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, where did you lose me?
You asked for a motion. Can you
motion
speak a
to-
little louder?
I'll be screaming if I speak any louder, but sure. I think my microphone's no good on this computer. It's my work computer, sorry. So we need to make a motion to postpone this appointment until our meeting on January 24th. Do I have a motion? Representative Iacono, seconded by Representative Carson. Any comments or questions? Am I screaming loud enough?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Item number 5, to hear, consider, and act upon the following reappointments to the Historic District Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. George E. Clark, Republican, 174 Old South Road, term November 2021 to 2026 as an alternate. And Christopher Shea, Republican, 1316 Cross Highway, term November 2021 to 2026. Do I have a motion to approve? Representative Ruggiero and Representative Siebert. Thank you. Are there any comments on these two appointments? Everybody's quiet tonight. I'm the only one yelling here. Okay,
Giving my voice for the holidays.
all those in favor?
Caroline.
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. I don't know if they're on. We said they didn't need to come tonight, so if they are here, congratulations and good luck in your new appointments. Item number 6, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointment to the FairTV Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. David Kraft, unaffiliated, 57 Flower House Drive, term July 2021 to 2024. Can I get a motion to approve? Representative Wackerman, seconded by Representative Zesma. Any questions on this item? All right, we'll carry on. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Mr. Kraft, if you're here, congratulations and good luck in your new position. Item number 7, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments to the Harbor Management Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Donald R. Hyman, Democrat, 61 Northfield Road, term November 2021 to 2025. Douglas E. Metchick, Democrat, 1201 Oldfield Road, term 2021 to 2025. William J. Perugini, Republican, 1080 Fairfield Beach Road, term 2021 to 2025. And Jeffrey S. Warren, Republican, 330 Parkwood Road, term 1121 to 1123, alternate, to replace Douglas E. Metchick, who is moving to a full member. Do I have a motion to approve?
Durrell.
Representative Vergara, seconded by Representative Durrell. Thank you. Any comments?
That says it all.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make motion to split the item, because Mr. Perugini and Mr. Warren were not in committee. I see that Mr. Perugini is on, but Mr. Warren is not. So I would like to make a motion to move Mr. Warren to a date certain, being January 24th of our next meeting.
Do I have a second of that motion? Representative Kelly, thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Who was
Aye.
that?
Iacono opposes.
Cormac opposes.
Britton opposes.
Batiste is opposed.
Monahan opposes.
Longo opposes.
Gale opposes.
Vergara opposes.
How many is that, Betsy?
Eight opposed.
8?
Iacono, McCormick, Britton, Astorita, Monahan, Longo, Gale, and Vergara.
Okay. Any
Aye.
abstentions?
I'm sorry, it's Frank Batiste.
Thanks, Frank.
I oppose as well. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're hearing me, Ruggiero as well.
Thank you.
Any abstentions?
10.
So what do we have, Betsy, now? What's the yeas and the nays?
I have 10 opposed, and let's see, we have 39 present, so 29-10.
Okay, so that motion to split carries. So can we vote on Mr. Hyman and Mr. Metchick? Any comments about those two appointments? No discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Mr. Hyman and Mr. Metchick, congratulations. So we'll move on to Mr. Perugini and Mr. Warren. Mr. Perugini, do I have a motion to approve? Representative Gale, seconded by Representative Woke. Okay, Mr. Perugini, since you were not at our committee meeting last week. Could you just tell us a little bit about why you want to serve and your background for this particular commission?
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. McDermott. I am a 20-year resident of the Fairfield Beach area, involved with the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary as a staff officer, also involved with a couple of neighborhood organizations that interface with the outer Southport Harbor, and last but not least, a longtime mariner, and I think some of my avocational activities and certainly my activities with the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary and those neighborhood organizations, namely the Fairfield Beach Residents Association and the Pine Creek Area Association, will lend very nicely to fulfilling the mission of the Harbor Management Commission.
Okay, Mr. Perugini, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Perugini? Okay, seeing none, so we will be voting on approving Mr. Perugini and postponing Mr. Warren to our 24th meeting. Is that correct, Betsy?
Mr. Moderator, Representative
Yes.
Iacono, point of information. I believe the item was split out so that we could vote on Mr. Perugini in one motion, and then the next one would be to postpone Mr. Warren.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will be voting now on Mr. Perugini's appointment to the Harbor Management Commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Bill. I think you'll be a great addition to that commission. Good luck.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the vote of confidence and look forward to serving the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Get a good tan, Bill.
Okay, so the final one out of this group of 4 is Mr. Warren. He is not available unless he's here. I don't believe so. So the motion is to postpone. All those, any more comments?
Mr. Moderator, Representative Iacono.
Yes?
Thank you. I will be voting no to postpone this item. It's unfortunate that Mr. Warren couldn't be here this evening. Unfortunately, he had a death in his family. However, I know that the chairman of the commission has spoken with him and recommended him, and I feel comfortable voting on him this evening. Therefore, I will be voting no to postpone.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
This is Cindy Parham, District 2. I just would like to meet him online in some way before we vote, and that's why I'm in favor of postponing.
Thank you, Representative Parham. Any other comments? Representative Georgiadis?
I'm going to be voting to postpone. I think it's important that this body has an opportunity to individually meet, ask questions, and interview the person. And for that reason, I look forward to meeting him when he can get there. I want to also make sure that he, given whatever tragedy he's experienced, that this is still something he's has the time to do and the interest to do. So I look forward to speaking to him at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Any other comments? Okay, I don't see any others, and there's none in the chat. So all those in favor of the postponement? Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
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 I think we're going to have to give names for Betsy. Representative Iacono, McCormick,
Kellison.
Cinto,
Monahan.
Monahan, Astorita. Any others? Britton, Batiste.
Gail, I'm going to vote no as well.
Monahan. Amy Ruggiero.
Vergara.
Is that all the no's?
Longo.
I have 11 no's. Astorita, McCormick, Iacono, Cinto, Monahan, Batiste, Gale, Ferentz, Ruggiero, Vergara, and Longo.
Britton.
Tallman too, but that's not gonna make a big difference.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Tallman too.
Britton and Tallman, you have those two?
Thank you.
Is that 14?
Yes.
Okay, abstentions? Okay, looks like that item is approved to be moved to our meeting on January 24th. Okay. Item number 8, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that in accordance with a request from the Affordable Housing Committee and the Director of Community and Economic Development, the purchase of property at 244 Greenfield Street, as more particularly set forth in the binder of sale be and hereby is approved, and further resolved that the use of the Housing Trust Fund to pay all costs associated with said purchase be and hereby is authorized. Do I have a motion to approve? Representative Wackerman, seconded by Representative Schwartz. Okay, Mr. Barnhart, you are here and available, correct?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, that's a step in the right direction.
Oh, you're doing well tonight. I was the one who had a little bit of a problem, I guess.
I'm knocking on wood right now.
So let's get lined up in the chat here, because I'm sure there are folks that have questions. So
A couple things to report, if I may, Mr.
that'll be great. Sure.
First, when we met in committee, there was a question as to whether or not there was a use restriction as it relates to a portion of Tungus Hill Park. We did do a full title search, and we could not find any use restriction or limitation on development rights as it relates to that portion of Tungus Hill Park. Also, I noticed, and you read in the record, the resolution, which in the second paragraph discusses funding. It should be noted that funding to purchase the property using monies from the Housing Trust Fund has already been duly authorized by the Affordable Housing Committee and Board of Selectmen, should the RTM decide to move forward with the purchase acquisition. So I think that that particular clause is redundant, or perhaps should be stricken, but I'll leave that to your discretion. I think there too was a question as it relates, so really what's before the body is the acquisition of the property. It should be noted that any future development plan as it relates to 244 Greenfield Street or the property directly behind 244 Greenfield Street would be subject to site plan review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which would require a public hearing. And I think there was some questions with respect to moratorium points and the need to pursue this. This is really about providing affordable housing in a way that's respectful of our current zoning regulations. It would obviously contribute points towards this or a subsequent moratorium, but a moratorium in and of itself doesn't address our affordable housing needs as a community. What it does is provide us the opportunity to determine how best to meet those needs as a community, as opposed to having developers dictate those terms to us through the state statute. So I just wanted to respond to a few questions. I'm sure there'll be others, but I wasn't able to respond to Representative Carson's question before tonight's meeting. So hopefully that addresses that question. Thank you.
You did. Thank you very much. I agree with you. I was just asking. Thanks.
It's an important point. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for getting to that question. I know it was sent later in the day. So All right, we're open for questions here, and I don't see any in the chat.
There are some in the chat,
Representative
Mark.
Kuhn,
I think there's 4 questions in the chat.
where, hold on, sorry. 827, okay, I gotta back up. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Let's start again. Representative Wackerman, I believe you're first.
Thank you. Karen Wackerman, District 7, through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Barnhart. Hi, Mark.
Good evening.
Hello. I know we're voting on the purchase of the property, but I think the whole project is, you know, if we authorize the purchase and those funds are used for it, and then the whole project is an issue, that's the problem. So I think there are some folks in the area who are concerned about the use of the park. And I know you said there was a title search done. Does that mean that you found the document that granted the land to make a park and it was clear that it didn't have a restriction? Or what do you mean by a title search?
That is correct. We engaged a title search service to review the warranty deeds that led to, there were a number of parcels that were included in the creation of Tungus Hill Park. We researched all of those deeds through which title passed to the town of Fairfield, and could not find or identify any use restriction in the warranty deeds.
How about there must have been a resolution of, I don't know if it was the RTM or what, that combined these parcels and created the park? I'm wondering if that had any kind of restriction. Do you know how that happened, that it actually became a park?
Again, we couldn't find any reference to any limitation. That's all I can report at this time.
So that it could be, I guess it's still an open question, perhaps, that whatever the town action was that created the park might have had some restriction. That might be something we need to dig for a little bit more.
I've
Mr. Baldwin
reviewed this with the town attorney's office, and as far as we can tell, there are no restrictions that would limit the use of a portion of the park for this purpose, nor in consultation with the Parks and Rec Commission and Director was there any indication from their records of any limitation or restriction as to use. So I don't know where else we could possibly find that reference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking that there might have been. I guess I would like to hear more from Mr. Baldwin about that. Maybe I'm wondering if there was some kind of vote that said this is going to be a park, and you know where the authority is for that. I think it's a little different in my mind to take a piece of the park for this. And I want to see a lot more affordable housing in town, so it's not any objection to that. But to take away the trees in the park in an area that's pretty built up seems a shame when there could be other plots of land that would be available. So I don't know. It's just I'd like to get a little more information.
If I may, in the same collection of warranty deeds was reference to the former Greenfield school site, our Washington Park site on Greenfield Street, which, as you know, I went through a similar process working with the Parks and Rec Commission. It was originally a school and then a pocket park, and ultimately the Parks and Rec Commission consented to its utilization to provide 10 units of senior affordable housing. So again, very similar process. Part of the same collection of deeds as relates to this particular area of town where the town acquired title.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all my questions, Mark.
Thank you very much. Representative Barris? Are you there, Steve?
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So Steve Barrett, District 6, through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Barnhart. His initial statement said that there was no deed restrictions in that portion of the park. Just for my own clarification, are there any deed restrictions in any part of the park?
We could not find any in any of the deeds associated with a title to Tungus Hill Park, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Barrett. Representative Kuhn?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Representative Kuhn, District 7, through the moderator to Mr. Barnhart. This is probably covered in the title searching that you've done, but we had an experience on my mother's property up in Vermont where a deed search done by a couple of abutting landowners had not revealed the fact that there was in fact a road running through their property, but the survey search that our surveyor did found that. I don't know if there's within the title search world here whether that would have all been covered or if there are other venues or other avenues that might show us that there had been restrictions placed upon this property that our typical title search wouldn't find, but some other search might.
Thank you for that comment. I started initially with our engineering department and a review of their records, and then when they didn't find any, so I'm kind of using the reverse technique. Actually discussed this with the town attorney who ordered the title search. So we've reviewed the records that we could find going through that process, both internally. We're using our in-house engineering surveying staff to perform that search, as well as using a outside title searcher.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful to me to know that the process is a lot more rigorous than landowners in Vermont.
Thank you, Representative Kuhn. Representative Spolier?
Hi, Representative Spoliar, District 4, through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Bernhardt. I was wondering what would happen today if we decided to postpone this to like the next meeting. If I know some of my colleagues are having some questions, and hopefully you'll be able to answer them. And I see there's a few that have them ongoing, but if for some reason there were some colleagues that didn't have all their answers at this meeting, what would occur if we postponed this to the next meeting? Would we lose out on this land, or how would that affect that?
Potentially, we would have to ask for an extension in order to close. I'm not sure, because there were tax implications for the seller as to whether, in fact, timing was an issue in terms of the sale proceeds hitting a calendar year, a tax year, as opposed to the following year. So I don't know the answer to that question. I'm certainly here to answer as many questions as I can. Hopefully I can address the questions of the body tonight if possible.
Okay, so you're not able to tell us if were we the only bidders on this land? Do you know the answer to that, or were there other people that were looking to buy this land?
The owner had originally approached the town, was working with a private developer and had approached the town to ascertain the possibility of acquiring a portion of town property to the rear. We indicated that we were not likely to sell town property under any circumstances, certainly to facilitate a private development where there was no public benefit. And as a result of that conversation, there was discussion about whether, in fact, the town could acquire his property to create affordable housing, to which the answer was affirmative. And so we pursued negotiations through that. It wasn't, so that's kind of the origin process here.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell me when the closing date is planned for this if we approve it today?
We were scheduled to close later this week, assuming all approvals were provided.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Spolier. Representative Havey, please.
Yes, hello, Lisa Havey, District 6. Mr. Moderator, through you to Mr. Barnhart. I have a question about the process moving forward. If this is approved and it goes through the rest of the zoning process and land process and everything else, is it possible to have an appeal so as it would not require the use of town property? And also the question is, will the new land use regulations voted in by the state of Connecticut recently, will that have an effect on how you use land and this particular land? And if my third part is, if it gets through all the zoning and fails, what happens?
Thank you, Representative Havey, for those questions. I'll take the middle one first. I don't think that any of the legislative proposals enacted into law this past session will have any bearing in terms of the potential future development of this site. What we had proposed to the Affordable Housing Committee was being mindful of existing zoning. So in the Residence B zone, you need a 9,000 square foot lot to construct a duplex. So the idea was to provide enough town property immediately abutting into the rear of this property such that we would create two conforming or duplex building lots on which to build two duplexes or 4 units of affordable housing. So the intent here is to closely adhere to our existing zoning, so more or less as of right. It still requires a site plan approval and does require a public hearing. And certainly before we went through that process, we would meet with the abutting property owners or those neighbors in the vicinity to discuss development plans and do our best to reasonably address any concerns that they may have, including providing adequate landscape buffers to any adjoining properties. So I don't think that we would take any more trees from the wooded area than absolutely necessary to create a development site. And those development sites would be fronting Greenfield Street or closer to the road than to the back. So there would be a adequate rear property to provide that buffer. So the idea was to, in creating affordable housing, be mindful of our existing land use regulations and zoning requirements and observe setback and lot size and other requirements to the extent possible, and do that in a way that's not only mindful of those requirements, but also sensitive to the neighborhood, as opposed to some of these set-aside developments that have generated such a significant opposition and concern. So I think that's the difference here, and the town certainly has no intention of selling the property. It would be ground leased such that we would allow for development to occur, but in that way maintain control and keep this affordable in perpetuity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Havey. Representative Monahan, please.
Hi, Veronica Monahan, District 1. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I believe to Mr. Barnhart, do we purchase title insurance when we make these purchases by the town? The assumption would be yes, correct?
We do, yes.
We do. And second question I have is, under what circumstances could neighbors not wanting development here, um, have an impact on, whether or not we move forward with this project? Is this something that we think the neighbors will be for? If they're all against it, is that something we still move forward on? I mean, I hate to ask that question, but.
Well, thank you for that question. I did speak to the immediate abutter prior to making this proposal, and it's too is an investment rental property, and the owner had no objections, and in fact expressed interest in doing something similar at some point down the road. So that was the immediate abutter at 254 Greenfield. I'm aware that there are other individuals, or at least a family that has expressed some concern. They live some distance away from the site, but are concerned in terms of the visual impact and the loss of a wooded buffer between this property and theirs. Again, that's over 500 feet from this particular site on a different road. And again, I think we don't have a specific development proposal to discuss, and that's really not the issue that's before this body. But at that point in time, it would certainly be my intention, as we suggest to all developers, to talk to not just the immediate abutters, but other individuals living in the area, make sure they understand what is being proposed, answer any questions that they may have, and certainly do what we can to address any reasonable concerns. And certainly one of the easy things that we can do, or any developer can do, is provide for adequate landscaping to buffer the visual impact of the development to abutting properties. So I think that is something we certainly would reach out to folks in the area and make sure that they not only understand what is being proposed, but we would take whatever steps we could within reason to address their issues or concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Monahan. Representative Gale, I believe, is next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, Hannah Gale, District 6, through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Barnhart. Mr. Barnhart, I'm concerned about two things. Number one, although I understood what you said and reported regarding the title search, I know that sometimes in these New England properties with a long history, the intentions of the original donor, because there was a donor here, someone gifted these woods to the town to be used as a wood, as a recreational wooded protected area for the benefit of all the people of Fairfield, from what I understand. And that, as someone else mentioned, even if you cannot find it in a title search, the wishes of the original donor may in fact be recorded somewhere, and may and should have an impact on how the town uses the land. Second, my concern is that you just reported that this would be the second encroachment into the only public land in this area of town. The area of town of Tungus Hill Park, unlike every other area in town, has very little open space, and it is very upsetting to me that that there is no concern about disrespecting the open land there that has been carefully accrued over time. I also know that the woods there are old woods, and any loss of trees there are a loss for anyone who uses the park, not just the residences that abut that area. So I am very concerned, and I do not think that it's appropriate to continue encroaching upon Tungus Hill Park, and particularly the only natural wooded area around there. And I would ask, as a general comment to the body and not to you, that we look at creating some sort of a protection, a legislation that protects this from further encroachment.
So it's more of a comment, but also, concerns about what do you know who the original donor is? Do you know what their original intentions were? Even though it may not have been recorded in a deed, it may be in something that could be found when there was a surveying done.
All I can report, Representative Gale, is that we've researched it thoroughly and could find no restriction or limitation. And with respect to the other comment or question, that's exactly why it's before this body, as was the case with the Washington Park property on Greenfield Street. It came through a similar process, which involved numerous boards and commissions carefully vetting the proposal and determining whether or not it was an appropriate use of town property given other public benefits or demands. So that, I'm not, this is rightfully before the body to make that determination. I understand the issues and concerns. I also know that Tungus Hill Park is a quite large area. It does provide, obviously not only active recreation, passive recreation and open space, and there will be every attempt made should the body approve this acquisition of 244 Greenfield Street, and there's an eventual development there to preserve much of that as an appropriate landscape buffer. But I certainly understand and appreciate the concerns that you're expressing. That's exactly why it's before this body for determination.
Thank you very much. And one more question. Has there been a wetlands assessment of that area right behind there? Because the letter we all received said that there was a brook there.
One of my first inquiries was to the wetlands administrator and asked whether or not there were any wetlands or regulated areas that were impacted by this, and the answer was no. There is, in fact, a brook and a wetland area behind this location, which again gives you some indication as to the extent of the wooded area that we're talking about, that's beyond the area that we're discussing as part of this potential proposal.
And could we have a report on the actual size of the woods and the size of, I mean, you did state how many feet of the woods would be taken, but actually, is there a firm estimate on what trees will be taken down, how much of the area will be used?
That would be part of a subsequent development application, but again, any development proposal as it relates to looking at affordable duplexes would be located nearest to Greenfield Street with an adequate rear yard to provide for that landscape buffer that I discussed earlier.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Representative Gale. Representative Wolk.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My question is to my friend Mark Barnhart. Hey, Mark.
Good evening.
Good evening to you too. So, I'm not quite sure how many of us in this body has actually seen the property and to the adjacent properties to this. So my question to you is, my colleague and I took a little tour, and Will Diaz, Representative Diaz, and he showed me about 200 feet from the abutment to the property that this is all going to happen with what we want to do with affordable housing. So my question is, as far as to you, Representative Gale, I mean, I looked at this property, and you're saying what trees are going to come down. You should see how many trees are already down in this property. It looks like it hasn't been maintained in many months or a year. There's garbage in there. There's debris in there. And on top of the whole thing, there's the Rooster River. That's been the problem with the Rooster River, with debris in the Rooster River. And a lot of us in our neighborhood can attest to that. That's the reason why we are getting flooded. So my question is to you, Mark, even though it's about 200 feet from the property, is there any chance of flooding? I mean, if this piece doesn't get taken care of, with the mediation of fixing the problem with the flooding, is this going to be a problem with that property? And then the other thing is there's a lot. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. Is that all going to be cleared out? That whole wooded area, because that's all part of the wooded area where this the affordable where you guys want to put affordable housing into. So thanks. I'll listen to you, Mark. Thanks.
Well, I can't speak to any longer term plans as it relates to any floodplain management issues, but in discussions with the planning and zoning staff, there was no indication that this would impact and adversely our floodplain management issues as relates to the Rooster River and mitigation measures that are being contemplated. So I don't think there's again, based on those conversations, any issues with respect to flooding or impacts as it relates to flooding. To your observation earlier, again, the area has not been well managed or maintained, so there is some debris in that area. There's also been issues as it relates to some activities in those woods that are not something that we would necessarily want to encourage. So, I know that that's something that the homeowner has or property owner has spoken of in terms of impact to his property. But, I think to your broader question, there aren't any immediate floodplain management or flooding issues that I've been made aware of as relates to this proposal.
Thanks, Mark. One more thing, if I could, Mr. Moderator. The other, just last thing in the wooded area that I heard from constituents, that there's a lot of activity with coyote that live in that wooded area also. So we just might want to, that could be an issue also. So, all right, thanks, Mark.
I was referring to the two-legged variety, but there may be a four-legged variety as well.
All right.
Thank you, Representative Wolf. Representative Vergara.
Thanks. Jill Vergara for District 7. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Barnhart. I hadn't intended to ask this question, but I thought that Representative Wolf raised a very good question about whether or not the current property has any flooding issues that would affect the viability of the property. Because we will ultimately be owning this property, right, and leasing it out.
Well, we currently own the property, obviously, immediately to the rear, although it's open space, a wooded area. So, to the extent to which there are issues, maybe they're not as visible to folks. But again, this was something that had come up earlier in terms of potential impact to flooding or floodplain management, and based on my conversations with my colleagues in planning and zoning, were no adverse impacts associated with any potential development of kind that's being contemplated here.
Okay, and the current owner hasn't been experiencing flooding in his property?
No.
Okay, thank you. So I remember attending POCD workshops a while ago when we could still meet in person. And there were large maps that I saw, and it was really cool because areas of parks and open spaces were mapped out in a really in a great visual way. So, and I could see very clearly that this area of town is suffocated of any kind of open space. It's sparse, the amount of open public parks and open space like this compared to other parts of the town. And I had thought, I remembered one of the goals that people wrote for the POCD workshop was to focus on these sorts of areas and to try to ensure that we were going to take a strategic approach and try to plan out more public space and more public utilization of areas just like this?
Thank you. My recollection was somewhat different in that I recall there being a need for additional open space areas, particularly around Commerce Drive, which has obviously been a heavily industrialized or manufacturing area of town being developed. So if there were opportunities to create additional public space within that area, that was something desirable. But be that regardless, I think you're raising an issue that needs to be balanced. We have public policy goals, one of which is to provide adequate areas for public recreation as well as passive open space. At the same time, we have a need to provide to meet our affordable housing needs and provide more generally for the housing needs of our population. So there are certainly things, these public policy goals need to be balanced, and this is, you're among the group that is responsible for determining what is the appropriate balance between the two.
Yeah, I agree that there needs to be balance. I have a problem with both of these issues bearing on one area of the town. So it seems like this part of the town is bearing a big part of the burden for affordable housing. In your memorandum, you mentioned that the parcel is located in very close proximity to the 14 units of owner-built housing that were developed in the late 80s and early 90s by the town, as if that's a good thing and that makes it something that we should be doing. But in my mind, I don't like the idea of concentrating this sort of housing in one area of town. I think it should be more dispersed, and I think there are a lot of reasons why we should be trying to integrate it more throughout rather than targeting one area of town for this sort of development. Not just my concern about open space and parks, which is a big concern of mine. I agree with Representative Gale that it's concerning to have two separate encroachments into this public open space. And I'm worried about the precedent we set and whether or not, what's the end point? Is this going to happen 3, 4 more times? I really don't know, but I don't like the idea of that. So I wish that we had an approach as a town that were more planned, like Representative Iacono has mentioned in the past, and I wish it were more spread out throughout town rather than targeting one area where it's extremely concentrated.
The only thing I would add is that, you know, obviously the site that we're acquiring is already developed. So in order to satisfy our own zoning requirements and to meet the goals that were set forth, we need additional property to meet our setback, lot size, and other zoning requirements. So I appreciate the thought. I do think that our overall goal is to look at affordable housing throughout town. It's not a responsibility for any one neighborhood, as it is in the state. It's not a responsibility for any one community to bear the burden. But by the same token, what's before us tonight is an opportunity to acquire this piece of property at a reasonable price that would allow for a very modest development of affordable housing to meet housing needs within the community. And you know, I understand that that has to be balanced against other public policy goals. So that's the matter for you tonight.
I have one last question for you. You mentioned that the development application would be the document that would determine how many trees would be cut down and that sort of thing. Is it possible for us as a body to condition our vote on a certain type of utilization of that space that we're giving from the park in terms of the number of trees or the amount of trees being cut down with the development?
I don't know, I just know that we'll need to provide a full landscape plan with our application. And certainly, a lot of, in my experience, most people are concerned about providing an adequate landscape buffer. Actually enhances the value of the property itself and development. So that's something that would be top of mind after we look at the actual development itself. To do affordable housing, you're typically doing something a fairly modest scale and size. So I think in terms of the development footprint, it's certainly going to be less impactful than what you would typically see with most private developments here in town.
Okay, thank you so much for appearing before us, and thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pagara. Representative Graceffa?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to Mark. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
A few questions for you. On the backup document that you provided with the satellite view, or that somebody provided from your office, there's the road, the frontage portion of 244 Greenfield Street, the portion of the open space behind it, and then I'm assuming 254 Greenfield Street sort of wraps in an L shaped behind it.
Correct.
For this piece, the acquisition and then the subsequent additional open space that would be needed, are you expecting to need that whole open space behind there, like that goes behind 254, or just a piece directly planned north of that area?
Thank you for asking that question. I don't know if I was clear before, and probably in providing sometimes a simple solution is not so simple. So we would not need the entirety of that piece. We would only need enough property immediately to the rear to create two 9,000 square foot lots. So there would be, in the area that I had originally indicated as part of the compilation plan, about half of that would not be required. It would be reserved as open space, or undesignated, if you will. So we would only need about half of the property that was indicated on that very simple drawing, where I just drew a straight line across from the rear lot line of the adjoining property. So about half of that would actually be necessary, that which is immediately to the rear of 244 Greenfield Street.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then it's also going to make sense that you're going to attempt to move forward with 254, because otherwise you're going to have this awkward sliver of land behind it. But that's for another day. A couple other questions. With that open space and the access to open space, is there any consideration when working with the development partner to create a permanent easement for access to that open space off of Greenfield Street?
If it could be done,
with a path and a safe entrance to that space, but I'm wondering if that would be under consideration.
The short answer would be yes. If it's feasible, absolutely.
Okay. And then the last piece, with affordable, with these being affordable housing units, does the town of Fairfield, when they partner with, for a ground lease with a development partner, do you put any energy efficiency and resiliency requirements upon the developer to meet certain criteria for these?
Again, excellent question. Yes, we would. We would look to, again, to provide, to the extent possible, any energy efficiency or sustainable measures that would lessen their utility cost and energy footprint.
Any resiliency items, if there are any flood concerns or they are in a wooded area, so power resiliency could be an issue in that zone.
To the extent to which we can do that within the development budget, absolutely.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm finished.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Racefa. Representative Lambert was next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom Lambert, District 3, through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Barnhart. Good evening, Mr. Barnhart. I just have a quick question, and it's kind of a doomsday scenario, worst case scenario question. But if there is a situation in which subsequent approvals from town bodies are not forthcoming for whatever reason for the development as planned for the property, is there some sort of backup plan associated with this particular property or use of this particular property? The concern I have is simply that we're making the assumption all along that if we have 2 duplexes there and 4 housing units, that we're going to actually have 4 housing units. But are we potentially going to be buying a property that might have only 2 duplexes or 1 duplex there, and therefore only 2 units? In which case, I don't know, that might change the calculus for some people in terms of what they think they might be getting, or just problem with development in there in that area in general.
No, I appreciate that. That's a good question. Thank you for that question. Yes, I mean, it is possible that in laying out the site, perhaps we can't fit 2 duplexes. When I originally had provided information to the board, I indicated that the intent would be to develop 1 to 2 duplexes, providing 2 to 4 units of affordable housing. Certainly one way to minimize some of the other impacts that have been discussed tonight was to take perhaps a more minimalist approach, but at the same time, again, there's a need for this type of housing throughout town. So the idea would be to try to provide for the 2 duplexes. Originally, when we looked at this too, I had talked to the Parks and Rec director because of the proximity to town-owned property. There's and whether or not there would be some benefit to providing for an additional access point off of Greenfield Street. So while that wasn't something that was being specifically sought after, to the point that was made by several of the previous speakers, that might be something that could be done in lieu of, should development not be possible on this site. But again, based on our review, clearly the site it's already been developed, 244. It would support, there's no question in my mind, it would support at least 1 duplex. I think 2 is certainly reasonable given the additional property to the rear. We would not need the extent to which what that was originally indicated in the layout plan that I provided to the RTM. We would need roughly half of that. Again, that which is directly to the rear of this property, but there are several options in the event that the full development proposal is for some reason that I'm not fully grasping at the moment, but to the your doomsday scenario, to the extent to which that becomes something that's realized, that there are other potential opportunities here as well.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Barnhart.
Thank you, Representative Lambert. Representative Durrell.
Yes, I'm sorry, Alex Durrell, RTM 3. That's right. Thank you, Mr. Lambert. I wouldn't have remembered. No further questions, Your Honorable Moderator, to Mr. Barnhart. But I do have a comment in that if you do Durrell.org, you get Durrell Wildlife Conservation. So I'm pretty interested in that. Under my mother's administration, there were approximately 215 affordable housing units built, which don't count because they were built before 1990. I'm also willing to bet I'm closer than about 3/4 of you to where the Tungus Hill Park is. So it's a rather conflicting issue, but I think the town has the right to do this. I'll be voting in favor of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Representative Durrell. I do not see any other requests to speak in the chat. Representative Iacona, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Pam Iacona, District 8. Through you to Mr. Barnhart, I just have a couple of comments as we prepare to consider this and what I would like to see from the Affordable Housing Committee prior to our completion of deciding on a vote tonight. I want to understand next month how this plan fits into the Affordable Housing's long-term plan. Where that factors in, and then how they see us moving forward with the Housing Trust Fund, where they want to allocate the money, how they think they would get the best maximum benefit for those dollars. I would also like to know how long they think it will take to build up our fund again. We did get information back from you, thank you, that told us that at its peak the fund had $1.4 million in it. This essentially is depleting the fund with this and some of the other work that we've done, so I'd like to know how long it would take to get back to that. I would also like for the Affordable Housing Committee to meet with the Land Acquisition Commission before they come before us, and to find out if there are indeed opportunities there, and to report any results that are worth pursuing, if any. I'd like an update on the Navy housing. And it would be my personal preference that you try to maximize our dollar usage there for housing when you do, if this money is approved, and that you do try and do the 4 duplexes, if that is possible for that piece, and if not, to most definitely pursue other ideas to expand this. As I mentioned at the last committee meeting, it's not how I envisioned using the trust fund money to do the one-offs until we actually were able to get to a moratorium. However, I do think that we ought to take advantage of this opportunity now that it's in front of us. We're just in a situation where we are basically stuck having to inch forward. But I would like to know from the Affordable Housing Commission next month that they have a plan to leap forward instead of inch forward. So if those things could be addressed at the January meeting when they come before us, I'd greatly appreciate it. So if you could pass that information on, I would appreciate it. My other thing is just a process question, and either for you, Mr. Barnhart, or Mr. Moderator. If indeed it is not our position, which I don't believe that it is, as you indicated at the start of the meeting, Mark, that we don't allocate the money for this. That's done, we gave that authority by ordinance to other bodies. I think we do need to make an amendment to reflect such in this motion so that the record is correct. Can anybody verify that? Mark or Mark or Mark?
That would be my recommendation based on my reading of the ordinance, but you know, I will defer to.
And that's my recollection of the ordinance as well. And if you have the exact words that we should strike out, I'd be happy to put that forward as an amendment when we get to it.
It would just be the second line.
Yeah, the second paragraph there.
Right.
Further resolved that the use of the Housing Trust Fund to pay all costs associated with said purchase be and hereby is authorized.
Okay. If somebody remembers that language, I'd offer up that amendment to strike that when the time is appropriate, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? Going once, twice, 3 times sold. Okay. So we're ready to amend this resolution then. So would you like to do that, Representative Iacona? We take out Second paragraph.
Sure,
trustee
Representative
Hayden.
Iacono. Yes, move to strike the language as read by the moderator.
Do I have a second? Representative Garskoff. Thank you. I think we need to add the "and" at the end of the first paragraph, okay?
Sounds lovely.
We have a period there, right? That would be proper English, I guess. Okay. All those in favor?
I'll get my wife.
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that language is struck. Do I need to read the, I'll read number 8 again, what we're going to vote on now. Item number 8 is to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that in accordance with a request for the Affordable Housing Committee and the Director of Community and Economic Development, the purchase of property at 244 Greenfield Street, as more particularly set forth in the binder of sale B, and hereby is approved. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Nay.
Representative Gale, Vergara, Garskoff, I believe.
Correct.
Anybody else? Just those.
Representative Barrett's also.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, so Betsy, we have what, 4 opposed?
4 opposed. Gale, Bergara, Garskoff, and Barretts.
Okay. Abstentions? Okay, that motion passed. I'm gonna say it's, what'd you say, 39, so 35-4?
35-4.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for being here late with us tonight.
Not at all.
Okay, we're on item number 9, to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting and which may be properly acted upon under the rules of representative town meeting. Just have one update. The SLMC had a meeting tonight to populate the redistricting committee. Does Secretary Parham have a report for us?
Yes, Moderator Mark, I have the 4 members of the committee will be Hal Schwartz, Karen Wackerman, Karen McCormick, and Pam Iacono. Jill wanted to add something about the timing of the reporting. If you would do that for me, Jill, thank you.
Okay, sure. Jill Vergara, District 7. I just wanted to clarify some of the dates. The RTM needs to vote by this legislation by April 25th, and this committee needs to submit their recommendations by February 8th at 10 a.m.
Okay. Anything else, or that it there?
I have a question.
Okay.
Does this, will this need to go before the body twice? So do we have to, is it going to be to hear and consider and then to hear and consider and act? Because I know the last time we did it, we waived the first one and just voted once. So if I'm gonna be on the committee and I have to work backwards with a date, which is probably sometime in May, if this body has to vote on it in April, that means I have to have it ready, we have to have it ready in March. So I want to be clear.
The date that you have to have it done by is February 8th at 10 a.m. That's when it needs to be submitted to the town clerk for it to be put onto the agenda for the committee meeting that month, and so that it can be on our calendar, for the RTM's calendar that month of
So
February.
it does need to be on the RTM calendar for 2 months.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, that gives us 4 weeks. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Moderator, Pam Iacono, District 8.
Yes,
I just
Representative.
wanted to add to the conversation that what we're trying to do with the SLMC is to work backwards from the primary date to avoid having 17 polling locations, which gives us an incredibly short runway to try and get this done. The town attorney is going to look into seeing if there's any wiggle room to extend that. And, we can ask for that to be amended at the SLMC if there is some room there. I don't know that this is going to be achievable that short of a time frame, but I know that the four of us will work really hard to try and see if we can do it. And if we can't get it done the right way, then we'll have to have 17 voting districts for the time being.
Okay. Sounds like fun.
I'd like to add, though, that having 17 polling districts would be incredibly expensive, and I'm hopeful that we can avoid that.
So am I.
Yeah, that'll be good. Okay. Just a couple of things. The Board of Finance Capital Planning Workshop will be held on January 12th for those interested. And just put on your calendars a save the date announcement here for January 3rd at 7 p.m. We will hear and vote on the Gould Manor Park finance increase. You should be receiving the warning by 12:27, but if you have any questions, there should be some backup from A, our June meeting, and B, the Board of Finance meeting from last week. Anything else?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to everybody. We don't have, we're going to have 3 meetings again in January, but hey, it's a great time. All right, make a motion to adjourn. Representative Woke and Representative Havey seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Care, everybody. Thank you very much. Good meeting.
Good job, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mark.